90% of people using AI tools are picking the wrong one for their workflow. Not because they're dumb, because the marketing is lying to them. ChatGPT is not the best AI in 2025. In some critical categories, it's actually the worst of the three. I ran over 40 real-world tests across Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini. The results genuinely surprised me. We are going to break this down into 5 categories that actually matter for people building with AI in 2025: coding, long-form reasoning, creative writing, data and research, and real-world automation. I'm not going to read you benchmark charts. Benchmarks are gamed. I'm going to show you what happens when you push these models on tasks you actually care about. By the end of this, you'll know exactly which model to use, when to use it, and why the answer isn't the same for everyone. This is the comparison I wish existed when I started. Let's start with coding, because this is where the stakes are highest and the gap is widest. I gave all 3 models the same task: build a functional web scraper in Python, handle pagination, parse JSON, and add error handling. ChatGPT's GPT-4o got it mostly right, but the error handling was shallow. It threw generic try-except blocks everywhere, not production quality. Gemini 1.5 Pro structured the code cleanly, but it hallucinated a library method that doesn't exist. That's a real problem when you're shipping fast. Claude 3.5 Sonnet, it wrote the cleanest code, caught edge cases I didn't even specify, and added inline comments that actually explained the logic. Not just what the code does. Why? For coding tasks, Claude wins, and it's not close. But here's the nuance. If you're using GitHub Copilot or Cursor with GPT-4o under the hood, the integrated tooling offsets some of that gap, because context management is handled by the IDE. Standalone though, Claude is the coding model of 2025. The Anthropic team has clearly prioritized developer use cases, and it shows in every output. If you're building automations, scripts, or APIs, start with Claude. Switch only if you have a specific reason not to. Now reasoning. This is where things get spicy. Long context reasoning means feeding the model a massive document or a complex multi-step problem and seeing if it actually thinks, or just pattern matches. Gemini 1.5 Pro has a 2 million token context window. That is an insane technical achievement. I threw a 400-page PDF at it and asked cross-referencing questions. Gemini found answers correctly. That's a legitimate superpower nobody talks about enough. ChatGPT's context window caps at 128,000 tokens with GPT-4o. It handles most documents fine, but push it to the edge and it starts losing track of earlier content. Not catastrophically, but enough to miss things in dense technical documents. Claude sits at 200,000 tokens and handles that context with surgical precision. Where Claude really stands out is multi-step logical reasoning. I gave it a business scenario with 10 interdependent variables and asked it to identify failure points. It walked through each dependency, flagged 3 risks I hadn't considered, and explained its reasoning clearly. GPT-4o's answer was correct, but shallower. Gemini's was broad but missed one key dependency. For complex reasoning tasks, legal analysis, technical audits, strategic planning, Claude and Gemini are battling for first. Claude wins on quality, Gemini wins on scale. Pick based on your document size. Creative writing. This one surprised me the most. You might assume ChatGPT leads here because of brand recognition and the sheer number of writers using it. But let me tell you what I actually found. I asked all 3 to write the opening chapter of a thriller novel. Same premise, same character brief, same tone direction. ChatGPT produced something competent, readable, totally forgettable. It felt like it had read 10,000 thrillers and averaged them. Safe, technically correct, creatively dead. Gemini's output was similar. Structured well, no obvious errors, but no voice either. It read like a well-organized first draft from a writing student. Claude? Claude took risks. It opened mid-action with a sensory detail I didn't ask for, built tension through what wasn't said, and gave the protagonist an internal contradiction that made her interesting. That is the difference between a language model generating words and a model that understands story. For marketing copy, email sequences, video scripts, storytelling, Claude has a genuine creative instinct that the others lack right now. I tested this across 5 different creative formats: ad copy, fiction, email, social posts, and product descriptions. Claude led in 4 of 5. The one category it lost? Short, punchy social media copy. ChatGPT's GPT-4o is faster and snappier for Twitter-length content. Research and data. This is Gemini's home turf, and I want to give credit where it's due. Gemini is deeply integrated with Google Search, Google Docs, Google Sheets, and the broader workspace ecosystem. If your entire workflow lives inside Google, Gemini is not just competitive, it's strategically superior. I tested a market research task: summarize competitive landscape for SaaS project management tools. Pull pricing tiers. Identify positioning gaps. Gemini with Google Search grounding delivered real-time data, cited sources automatically, and structured the output in a way that was immediately usable. ChatGPT with its Bing browsing plugin came close, but the citations were messier, and some data was slightly outdated. Claude without live search access in the base version was working purely from training data, which cuts off in early 2024. It produced a solid structural framework, but the specific numbers were stale. Now, Claude with tools plugged in through the API, or through a platform like Zapier or Make, changes the equation. When you give Claude web access and a search tool, it becomes a research machine. But out of the box for live data tasks, Gemini wins. Use Gemini for anything requiring current information or Google ecosystem integration. Use Claude for synthesis and analysis once you have the data. Now, the one that matters most for this channel: automation and real-world workflow building. Which model should you be plugging into your Make, Zapier, or N8N automations? Which one handles agents and tool use reliably? Let's be honest about where each model stands. ChatGPT via the OpenAI API is still the most integrated model on the planet. Nearly every automation platform has a native OpenAI connector. The ecosystem is massive, and the reliability at scale is proven. For anyone building production automations right now, the tooling around GPT-4o is still the most mature. Claude, through the Anthropic API, is catching up fast. The tool use and function calling is excellent, arguably better than GPT-4o in terms of following complex structured instructions without hallucinating tool parameters. For agentic tasks, where the model needs to reason across multiple steps and call multiple tools in sequence, Claude makes fewer catastrophic errors. Gemini's API integration is improving, but the ecosystem is thinner. It shines inside Google's own automation: AppSheet, Looker, Google Cloud Workflows. Outside of that, you'll hit more rough edges. My honest recommendation: run your automation backbone on GPT-4o for compatibility and reliability. Use Claude for the intelligence layer, the steps that require nuanced judgment, complex instructions, or creative output. Use Gemini when your workflow is Google native or requires live data. Stack them. That's what the smartest builders are doing right now. Here's the brutal truth: there is no single winner. Claude dominates coding and creative tasks. Gemini owns real-time research and Google workflows. ChatGPT wins on ecosystem and integration maturity. The builders winning in 2025 aren't loyal to one model. They know which tool to pull and when. Stop picking a side. Start building a stack. If this was useful, subscribe. I post every week on AI tools that actually work.